Welcome to Voice AI Happy Hour, where Jack and I talk about things we're learning, building in the world of voice AI. Last time we talked about some of the common challenges that teams building production voice AI systems hit, and we've spoken to a lot of them. So today we're just going to talk about what have they told us in the way of tips and tricks and things that we found to be practical or interesting that they're using to increase reliability of their voice agents. Probably the biggest area that we hear people tell us this is a problem for my voice AI system is audio quality and transcription. So correspondingly, we've heard of tons of small tips, tricks, things that people are doing to make their systems work better. I think starting kind of at the top, like one of the obvious ones is if you have bad quality audio and you feed it into an agent, if it doesn't know what you're saying, like everything down the chain doesn't work as well. So a very obvious one that we've heard about is people using audio isolation tools basically to improve the audio quality, particularly in noisy environments. I don't know if you could speak a bit more to that one, Jack.
A lot of people that we spoke to use like Krisp and AI Acoustics, and AI Acoustics are the ones that do it. I think the Sennheiser, is it Sennheiser or Bose, one of the like amazing audio cancellation headphones, and that's pretty much what they're doing is like just isolating the sound that you want and removing all the background noise. And yeah, I think for low quality audio environments, call centers or like people calling in on their phone from the street or whatever, it's like really helpful. A lot of people have said that has been like a kind of game changer for them. Solve challenges overnight is the sort of thing people have said. And Krisp is the other one that I think a lot of people know, Krisp with a K. And then I think we did also see some people doing like, I know Anthony told us about doing LLM filtering. So like using LLMs to actually filter out like what the transcription that comes from the background noise. I mean, anyone that's been testing in like a cafe or a co-working space, you can see other people's, like what other people around you are saying come up on the transcript, right? And I think that's the sort of thing that it can do that could be pretty effective.
Yeah. I think it's obviously the ideal voice agent environment is someone has a great microphone in a quiet space, but the real world use case of a lot of voice systems is people are in noisy environments on the phone. And so it's like very suboptimal often in practice. And just one of the differences between like some of the demos you see and then a production system that is talking to customers primarily in warehouses or something. So I think obviously like getting quality audio is really important. I think actually this might be one of my favorites that has come up, I think a couple of times is, assuming that someone has bad quality audio or the agent misheard them, literally just prompting the agent to ask the user to repeat themselves or speak louder. It seems kind of almost so obvious when you say it, and it's how a human would operate on the phone. But because voice agents are not human, I think it kind of seems a bit counterintuitive in some way. But that one obviously has quite a high success rate.
But I always think just in normal life, when someone calls you and you're like, your friend, and you're just like, oh, dude, I can't really hear you. And then they're like, oh, wait a second. And then it's like, they switch from the headphones to like the handset and suddenly it's 100 times better.
Yeah.
And I think it's that basically. It's like a lot of the time when the transcription's failing, it's like you listen to it and you're like, I can see why this was really hard, even as a human, to understand.
Yeah.
And then the human can often fix that.
I think there's probably like some meta advice there as well of when building these systems, just trying to remember how would a human handle these edge cases, right? There's probably a lot to be gained there, and not forgetting that you are talking to a human after all. And so there's ways that the agent can kind of become a bit more conversational without adding background noise filtering or anything. Another one we had heard about, which is a bit more advanced, is running like parallel transcription processes to improve the agent's overall understanding of like what's being said in the conversation. that one was pretty interesting.
Yeah. So I think we spoke to Jan a lot about this from a great company called Swap Commerce, and he's been trying to implement this. And essentially, it's like that. You have bigger models that are slower but more accurate for transcription, and you can kind of use reasoning to figure out where things were going wrong. And if you get that running in the background, then you can kind of keep the fast replies coming, but you can build better understanding over time. How you handle that, I think, is kind of an art and like something that's quite difficult, because if if you realize that the whole conversation was based on a misunderstanding that the bigger model figures out, like how do you handle that sort of thing? How do you feed that big model's context back into like the conversation that you've got going on? It's a challenge, but I think this could be a really, really strong option if done well. But yeah, it feels like quite early on that.
Yeah, no, I think that one's interesting to me because it's like one of the things working with LLMs is that, they're non-deterministic, obviously. And so they kind of, having LLMs check each other's work as like a meta area is interesting. It's like not the only time we've heard about systems that do that, but obviously transcription is just like incredibly crucial, getting the transcription right, not just the words and like, did someone say this word or that word, but what's the overall like context of this conversation? Making sure the LLM actually understands that is obviously very important to the LLM being able to help the user or have a successful call. I don't know. I feel like we heard some other ones in this camp of like using fast and slow thinking. Was that related to transcription, or was that more of a back end?
I mean, I think anytime that there's AI, maybe not in text to speech, because that would be a bit weird, I guess. But in terms of the reasoning and the transcription, I think if you have models which are fast and slow, serving different purposes, like something to get quick replies and then something that's doing like a lot of thinking, it makes a lot of sense. Like, and I think that again, it makes it more difficult because you've got to think about how do they work together? Like, when does one pick up? When does the other pick up? Like, but I think there's a lot of potential for this to work really well.
Another one that I think was kind of interesting on transcription accuracy was someone told us they run like extra processing after a call, basically using real-time transcription for the conversation flow and then running slower, higher quality models after the call to improve the final accuracy of the transcript. So
yeah, I mean, I think this one is probably much easier to implement as well, because it's like you don't need to think about how they interoperate, because you're just gonna, for the post-call stuff, you could probably just use one slow model and it sends like summaries or does some stuff, and it's not like it doesn't need to be in real time. So you can just like, you don't need the fast one, you can just use the slow one, and like get it to correct stuff. Or if like if it's checking the call or like flagging issues that might have been missed, or like flagging misunderstandings, that sort of stuff. Like, I think it's pretty kind of relatively simple one to like add to the flow that could be pretty useful.
So what context would that one be used for? Because it's obviously, it doesn't help the agent in the conversation, but it helps the system after the fact. Is that kind of a use case there?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that is still valuable after the fact it can help you with, but not stuff that needs to be right there. So if you wanted something that checked whether, like if you were checking like satisfaction score or like writing up like summary notes or something, you might want like a really good transcription, or like collecting email addresses, double checking email addresses, that sort of stuff. Like maybe you would do that. Or like you could run the slow transcription and the slow LLM on it as well. Yeah, there's something that layer code like we're exposing, so you can just get the audio and the transcription. I'm not sure if I don't think we've actually exposed like automatically running it for a slow massive model yet, but I'm sure we can do that soon if people want that. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
you get the audio anyway though, so you can do that.
you can do
You
what
can
you
run.
want with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the trade-off between accuracy and speed is what is central to a lot of these systems. And I found another interesting one that we'd heard about, which maybe speaks to just kind of how early the tech for all this still is, in situations where it's really critical to have transcription accuracy. I think this case was to do with license plates that we'd heard about. It's like literally just having the agent add a deliberate pause to delay to kind of buy time for the model to run a slower model with higher accuracy on the transcription. And that one, it's like, it's being used in like a high stakes data collection where errors are quite costly, but obviously the user experience suffers, but the accuracy in the conversation improves. So I think those trade-offs are interesting. It's interesting to hear about people, again, like with systems in production, doing real work with human conversations, where they choose to make those trade-offs today.
I think, didn't they find as well that it was like very like language specific? Some models were just like much better at like surprising models. Like I think for German it was like Mistral speech to text was like much better than OpenAI's model for German. I guess because it's European. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all the same, right?
Maybe they have more actual data set of that language in how the model's trained, right? I think different speech to text models being better or worse for different, not even just types of conversation, but different languages is obviously one of the reasons that teams are pretty much trying every model. Like lots of people we speak to haven't really settled on one favorite. Like maybe for a particular agent use case, they found a Deepgram voice or an 11 Labs voice works really well, but then all the models get updated next month. And then so they try a whole bunch more again. And as you said, in this example, we're speaking to some teams in Europe who are having a different experience with the language needs that they have. And so, again, all this stuff is moving so quickly. Like people are evaluating and trying all kinds of components in their voice agents. And yeah, I think, provider specific optimizations in the agent itself is where some people are landing. So basically there isn't one solution to a problem in voice AI. And if you get something working this week, there might be a new set of tools or models that could work much better next month. So it really pays to kind of keep paying attention to the developments in the space, I guess.
Yeah. It's just time consuming, isn't it? I think most people are like, they wanted to try more stuff, but it's just time consuming to set it up. And I think there is often like, it's not that easy to just like switch to a model and then you notice all the different quirks and it's like, it's just that trade-off between like trying lots of them, but then knowing that it's really hard, like it's a big time sink to test a new model. It's not like, you can't, it's hard to just like vibe test it in 5 minutes and be like, yep, better. For complex cases where like maybe it's really good, but then it's just bad at taking German number plates. Like it's all these kind of things that are really important to depending on the use case that you're working in.
I feel like generally in AI, but especially in voice AI, it would be nice to have an extra day of the week just to kind of pay attention to what the latest things are because it's all moving so quickly.
True.
But yeah, to your point, like the one thing teams don't have an excess of is time, and experimenting with everything new takes time. So it's one of the challenges of building these systems.
Yeah, I think it's something that we've thought about as well, is like, because obviously people can switch models with layer code, but it's not just that's like time consuming. Like even if you can just like flick, even if it's all like the same and you can just change the model, it's like you want to make sure that it works in all the different edge cases and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think some people do like lots of testing there and stuff. I'm sure we'll get onto that, but yeah, it's a challenge, and it's something that, you know, if you change your model and it's a much better model, it's going to make a huge difference. It's not just about the application code that you write, but like just having a better model will somehow like magically just make it better. But you want to check it's not, it doesn't just seem like a good model, but it's actually like, yeah.
Like it's better in every way apart from this one always mispronounces your company name or something. And so those kind of things. There was one other quite funny hack, I guess. I'd just call this more of a hack than a tip or a trick on like increasing reliability of transcription. But we had heard from one team who found that basically the quality of phone calls was lower than the quality of like a digital recording. And so they ended up using WhatsApp voice memos to capture higher quality audio from phones and increased their transcription accuracy. Like I think he said transcription is perfect now with this approach. And obviously that's not a real-time voice agent conversation, but it is collecting data through voice from users. The other thing I found interesting about that is like it works great in the EU and in the UK where people use WhatsApp. In North America, hardly anyone uses WhatsApp, so it's just not even a viable approach. So I found that one quite funny.
Do you guys not use it in Canada either?
Not really. It's not ubiquitous. People use like iMessage here, basically.
Okay. Yeah. It would work in the UK. I can but yeah, that's not such an attractive market as North America. So,
but
depending on the use case.
But again, I guess that kind of speaks to like how early the market and the tooling really is, right? If that was someone's workaround hack was basically, well, we won't use real-time conversation. We'll use a different way of collecting that data. So, and I think on a similar track, another solution, I guess this is also a hack or like a different UX basically, is if voice isn't working, just giving the user the option to use text as a backup, whether that's sending an email through text or a insurance number or something, you know, having that as part of the agent experience that they interact with, which obviously is hard if you're just building a phone agent. But remembering what voice is really good for and remembering sometimes what text is good for, I think when building these systems and it is important to keep top of mind.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, even just in like testing and stuff, it's just nice to have text as well. Because it's just like often, especially when you're testing like the agent stuff, the stuff that doesn't match the voice, like it's just nice to have a little like chat text version anyway. So, and I think there's some really nice examples like that Boardy one where like it's just a mix of voice and text. It's like a really nice example.
Yeah, Boardy's fantastic. For anyone who hasn't checked out Boardy.ai, BOARDY.ai. It's a really good example of a product that uses voice for one specific part of the onboarding. But yeah, would encourage any kind of founders or builders to check that one out. The next critical thing, I think, is like when a user is talking to a voice agent, how do you ensure that conversation is actually flowing naturally? That's kind of the core part of the user experience of voice AI. So we had a few interesting things there. I think one of the very obvious ones that lots of systems deploy, but it's worth noting, is when a system is like processing, instead of having nothing, like silence to the user, having some kind of thinking noise. So basically, with silence, I think users tend to think, oh my God, is this system broken? Or they might be more likely to start asking it, hey, did you hear me? Or, and the second that happens, the conversation kind of splits off sideways, and then the system can get confused. The user can, it's more likely that the system would talk over the user or the user would talk over the system, and kind of the whole conversation goes off the rails. Whereas adding simple sounds is like a very common one, right, Jack?
Yeah, I think just like thinking like, like, and then just noise. I think if you have background noise, it helps, right, as well. People do like beeps or like the ChatGPT clicks and repetitive sounds. But I think this sort of thing really matters. Like it's not as like high tech as some of the other stuff, but like I think it makes a huge psychological difference. It's not just about the time that you're waiting. It's like how long does it feel, not just how long is it actually.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned there the one probably most people are familiar with is ChatGPT and the kind of the noise it makes in between turns. But I think it kind of comes back again to thinking a bit like if this was a human you were talking to, if I was talking to you and we're having a conversation and I'm looking at you and then your face just goes completely dead for 3 seconds, that's going to feel really weird. Similarly, on a phone call, if you're talking to someone and they're helping you with a support issue or something, they might say, hey, I'm just looking that up, or give me a minute, or something like that. And so it's quite a straightforward thing to get the agent to do, and it can go a long way.
Yeah, there was this classic design story that was people were complaining that an office building's elevators were slow, and someone installed a lift. Someone installed a mirror. I don't know if it was intentionally to solve the problem, but everyone stopped complaining because they just stared at themselves in the mirror, and that distracted them. And I think this is kind of an example. Like, you could make it faster, or you could just give people a mirror to look at in a way. Give them something entertaining. Don't give them George Ezra Budapest which is, I don't know if they do that in Canada as well, but in the UK it's just every time you call up a call center, it's like, let's play you George Ezra Budapest. Don't do that, but like, something interesting.
You can see similar things with just general user experience design, right? I mean, we kind of in software obviously have loading screens, but I guess like in modern video games, loading screens often are like mini games, or they kind of hide them in ways where it doesn't feel like you're just sitting there waiting. And so I think it's a similar concept with conversational design. And like when voice is the primary method of interaction, like it's the user experience. And so thinking about it like that is the way to go, I think. I think similarly, again, on this track of like, what would a human do if you're talking to a human, is just in situations where a user doesn't say anything for a few seconds, having the agent be proactive and say, sorry, I can't hear you, or, do you need me to repeat that? It's quite a simple one, but it helps prevent error states, also in noisy environments. And when, I think we already talked about this, but having the agent explicitly ask if the user would repeat what they said. But again, just punctuating kind of moments of silence in a thoughtful way.
Yeah, and I think like in the classic like AI chatbot loop, this is not going to happen because it's you send a message, they respond, you send a message. It's the ping pong style. So actually, like, this does take some, even though it seems simple, it's like there is some implementation to this to go outside of that little loop. So, like when people are detecting like when to take their turn, a lot of the people we spoke to found that it was more effective to err on the side of being like not barging in and just letting some silence happen, even if it felt like a bit awkward sometimes. It was better than like the agent being too eager and just barging in when someone was speaking, because it's like really annoying when that happens.
And it comes back again, I think, to just like, if you're talking to an agent that feels rude, probably you don't want to talk to it. It might be more likely to hang up the conversation. Or so these voice systems that feel a bit more patient or forgiving are likely to provide a better conversational experience for users. Like we obviously in layer code have baked in like a turn timer for users to increase or decrease the average time there. But I think that's like a blunt way of implementing this, but just I think some of this comes back again to like the general turn-taking expectations of a conversation, and how long is the user responses? Are they just saying one words, or are they giving longer sentences where they're conveying critical data? Things like that are really important.
Yeah, that's got to be the future. And I think a lot of these like advanced models probably take that into account. Deepgram Flux, for instance, that have like embedded turn taking and stuff, but person by person, conversation by conversation, what they're saying, these things matter. So we saw that some people were having like issues with the model mispronouncing brand names or their customers' brand names. And one solution that some people had was they found that the model, the LLMs are very good at generating something called IPA, which is International Phonetic Alphabet. And they were able to get it to like generate International Phonetic Alphabet, which they could then use to give to the text-to-speech model to pronounce correctly. I don't know if this will work for all of the text-to-speech models, but this I thought was quite a cool little tip just to round out on that. If you hadn't already, it might be worth trying for like some of the hard pronunciations.
Yeah, particularly for names and brand names and things like that, right? Where you just want to make sure that the agent doesn't trip itself up every other time it says it.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah, we're continuing to talk to people building all kinds of voice systems. So we'll be back with more tips and tricks and trying to share everything we're learning that's interesting and could be useful to other people building voice AI.
Thanks everyone for listening.